This video is in full HD with some close-up shots, so hopefully you'll be able to see what the material looks like as it's being applied. First, we'll show a few pictures of the top of the motorhome. Notice here we have a repair that's been done with Turnabond tape. There's a long repair along the back of the motorhome that was done before I purchased it. You can see some degradation here of just the old coating, and then finally up front a satellite dish that has been removed, and we have covered all the holes up with the Turnabond tape. We have scrubbed the entire roof of the RV with a scrub brush with some Dawn dishwashing liquid as recommended to remove any oily residue, and then followed that up with a high pressure wash to get rid of any soap or other material, loose material that would be on top of the motorhome. Of course, all holes have been patched, and we've added a little caulk around. I'll move to actually brushing onto the top of the motorhome. You really do need to go ahead and tape off all your motorhome. It's going to make it a lot easier for you. This material applies like a very thick paint. You can move it around once you get it on top of the motorhome, but it is pretty thick. So any cheap brush will do. This is not a very delicate application, and you're really just trying to get it on there and cover it, which is no problem. It's a really thick material. It's like a really heavy paint. Nothing too unusual about how it goes on. My question was it going to run when I got to the side of the motorhome? And as you'll see here, we'll go ahead and put some on the side of the motorhome. And actually, no, it's thick enough that it doesn't just immediately start running down the side of the motorhome. This does not mean that the material will not run at all, but you can easily work with it on a vertical surface. Here you can see up close the condition of the roof. It has a lot of surface irregularities, small pits, neatly covering those up and giving us a nice smooth surface. Application is really as thin as I could put it on. Just brushing it back and forth, you really can't get it too thin. After cutting all in around the edges, I found that my application rate was at the 100 square feet per gallon that was recommended. So as thin as I could put it on with the brush came out to the recommended application rate. Here you can see the side of the RV. It's not running down the side uncontrolled. I apologize for the shaky handheld camera, but I'm trying to get you some up-close shots so that you can see how this actually applies and how well it does fill up all the irregularities on top of the old roofing material. As you can see, it's going on quite nicely, not running too badly down the sides, or really not at all at this point. We did have one small run at the back of the RV, which was easily touched up before it dried. But pretty easy to work with, just a really heavy paint. Again, you're going to want to have everything taped off so that you can move pretty fast with this. You do have a limited pot time. Okay, moving on to the horizontal application with a large area. We're using a roller, as you can see. It's very easy to roll the material on. Again, just really thick. You can see the Turnabond patches that have been applied over the holes where the satellite was. You put the liquid RV roof directly on top of the Turnabond without the primer. It goes on really well, covers up nice. Again, the application rate was, as the manufacturer recommended, at 100 square feet per gallon, and was pretty easy to work with. Okay, continuing on the horizontal application, again, easy to put on. We did find it's easier to just load half the roller. Otherwise, it just wants to slide around in that pan. But you can load half the roller, put it on the roof, and then just move the material around. It works really well. It took us about 2 hours, 15 minutes to complete the entire coating, and that included going back, going along the sides, pulling the tape off, and touching up a few places. While it did go on really thick, really heavy, we did have a few runs from probably just over application. That was easily fixed within a 2-hour window, going back and just smoothing it out with the brush, being able to touch up a few spots. You definitely want to tape off the motorhome when you do this.
so that you can have a nice clean edge. You'll notice here we have some paint running down over this trim. We just left that because we're actually replacing all of this insert trim once this roof is dried up. Other notes, we did have a few places that it dripped onto the side of the motorhome off of the paintbrush, and also using a roller on the side. That was easily cleaned off, surprisingly. If you get to it within a couple of hours, you can get it, it'll just wipe right off. Did not leave a residue. Be careful when using a roller. You'll have to go slow if you're going to do it on the sides, because it will, it's so heavy it will create strings of material. If you go too fast, it will kind of fly off the roller and go down the side of the motorhome. So really, I think it's best to just...
With the brush. For some reason, the audio cut out on that section of the live tape, but easy enough to clean up off the side of the motorhome. However, not easy to clean up off the concrete if you let it dry. Get down there and get that off the concrete within a few hours. Once it's dried overnight, it's pretty hard. We got a lot of bees, oddly enough, on top of this motorhome base. But again, not a problem. The next day, once it was dried enough, we just peeled those off, and it didn't leave any holes or other places. You can see here it's got a nice thick coat, and we're just going to be waiting for it to dry.
Okay, so the morning, getting ready to put on the EPDM rubber coat. It's finally dried to a tacky consistency that we can walk on, which took about 30 hours, but our temperatures were quite low, hitting only about 70 in the day and the low 50s at night. But you can probably hear that it's got a little tacky sound to it. So it's like it's ready to go. We'll put some paper on and start working. Just finished taping off the paper. One thing I would mention is I tend to tape the paper up higher so it's not pulled out straight. Kind of gives you a little bit of a lip here for the paint to drip on when you're brushing. I did that all the way down the side of the motorhome. It just helps keep stuff off the side of the motorhome. While this doesn't sound particularly wet, it is just now barely dry enough to walk on. In fact, if you stay in one spot too long, when you put all your body weight on it, it starts sticking. So it looks like it's about time to get ready and mix up some rubber paint.
As thin as I could put it on, it did not immediately again run down the side of the RV, but we did have some spots that developed some drips, so you will need to kind of keep an eye on that. We did not do that and came back and found a few that it was too late to get them straightened out. You'll see some pictures of that at the end. Overall, easy enough to work with. You need to move pretty fast. Our temperature was about 70, 75 degrees, and it was setting up, again, once we got it on the RV pretty quickly. So if you do develop some drips, you want to make sure you catch those pretty quick. Now back to live audio, detailed shots of the brush application.
I've been waiting for it to dry. We keep coming up here and testing it and feeling it, and it feels fairly dry with your thumb until you try to step on it. And it's been out here now for over 30 hours applied to the roof, and it's still quite tacky and probably wetter than what we want to walk on at the moment, but I think once we get this done, it will have dried a bit more here in the sun. But hopefully you can see up close how this is going on, how thick it is. Not really getting any runs in the material. You really can't paint it around. I mean, once it gets on and gets attached to the roof, you can spread it around a little bit, but it really doesn't thin out too much. So hopefully you can see how this is behaving on the side. As I paint this on. yeah, it goes on pretty heavy, pretty thick. Noticed, as opposed to we did a lot of that from the top, I think we're going to do all the edges this time from the side. One, we don't have to kneel down in the gooey primer, or tacky primer, and it's just easier to see what you're doing down here on the side. Alright, see here we've got a B. We're going to have a lot of those, I'm afraid. We had a lot of them in the primer, and I can see we're already getting some here in the rubber roofing as well. Probably not anything to worry about. It's like all the videos that you've seen online, everybody seems to have lots of bugs by the time it's over with. For this, one thing I would suggest is a squeegee with a stiffer handle. I just had a piece of PVC pipe, and that's really not stiff enough to work with this stuff. You really need something a little bit stronger. But it just takes a couple extra swipes with it. But just kind of move it around with the squeegee, and then come back and back roll it, and it goes pretty fast at this point. Once you get to pouring and squeegeeing and rolling, it moves fast. Like most paint jobs, all the cutting in and preparation is the real work. And after a little squeegee work, following up with the 1/4 inch snap back roll, and we get a nice even coat. Okay, and here is our finished roof. Just finished putting on this last bit, painting ourselves off the roof, and it looks pretty good. Went on thick. We used all but maybe 1/3 of a gallon, and time to pull the tape off the sides and let it set for a few days.
Okay, after a few days of drying, I got up on top and took a few up-close pictures. So here's some detail of the Turn-A-Bond tape repairs on the roof. You can see it left a nice thick coating all around the edges, so I think that's going to seal that in nice and tight. You can also see the front ridge cap. It makes a nice seal around that. And as we move to the back, the rear ridge cap and around the ladder, looks like it's going to make a nice, solid, continuous seal for this new roof coating. Also looked really good along old seam repair that was on the top of the RV. It left a nice thick coating all along that, so that looks like that's going to be sealed in real well. As noted before, we did have a couple of runs, and this last picture you'll see one up at the top. Forgive the dirty motorhome. I didn't want to wash it and get the water on the roof yet. Do be careful. You can get some runs on this roofing material, but watching it, you can go back and touch those up. I was unable to do that because even though it had only been probably 45 minutes, that material had pretty much set up on the side of the roof by that point. Anyway, all in all, looks like a good job. It left a nice thick coat on it. Hopefully that'll last 15 years. I would also like to thank the folks that had posted videos previous to this on the application of this material, as I found it very helpful before starting this project. While this has been a little bit long, I hope that you find it helpful, and hopefully the up-close shots and high-definition video will give you some idea of what the materials like.